Welcome back to the party, pal. The D&D party, that is. I'm Mr. Sean, and this is Chimera Miniatures, and today we're looking at r/RPG horror stories. I think most of us go into tabletop games thinking, hey, I'm gonna, tell a story with my character, and it's gonna interact with other people's stories, and it's gonna create something magical. But unfortunately, these games are played with other people, and other people suck. And these are stories about how they suck. For those of you who come to this channel strictly for the drunken ramblings or the lost media videos, do not worry, they are on their way. In fact, for our next drunken ramblings video, I have something very special planned. Hopefully I can pull it off. You still have a few days to enter the 400 subscriber giveaway. That can be found over on Lesser Known Lost Media Volume 15. I'll put the link in the description for you. Just go there, watch the video, enter the key phrase, and then you are entered to win. A while back, I asked what kind of videos you would like to see more of, and one of the top contenders was RPG horror stories, so hey, might as well give the people what they want, so here we go. Our first story today comes from Masked Cats and is entitled, "The DM forced my character to sleep with his character, and requested erotic roleplay after the session. There is a trigger warning of not safe for work and a warning for SA." I've very much been on the D&D grind lately, and only recently came across this sub, so I thought I'd share the only real horror story that has been stuck in the back of my head the past 4 years I've played D&D. The party was adventuring through a spooky forest during nightfall, and one of the party members was quite exhausted of their resources. So we managed to find a small inn on the outskirts to rest at. The place felt quite homely until we met a pair of traveling merchants who were shapeshifter siblings. The DM was quick to reveal these were his characters that he had played as before. One of them began flirting with my character, but I made it clear I wasn't interested before he turned to trying to magically charm me. Thankfully I saved and then put my foot down, but the rest of the party didn't read the room and insisted we finish resting there. The DM's character then tried to spice up the night for the rest of the party by challenging our barbarian to the duel. If the barbarian won, we would get supplies for the day ahead of us, and if he lost, then I'd have to take something from us instead. I spent most of the fight watching, discreetly casting spells to aid the barbarian before he won the fight, but the DM's character would notice my tampering and rule that he won by default, before picking my character up and taking him to his room, with the session ending then and there. I'm sorry, so they got to take something from you? I don't think that means you get to sleep with one of them. I mean, the DM said that supplies were on the line, and then, but what he got in return was sex. Well, I mean, why didn't that shifter offer themselves up in the same manner if that's the rules we're playing by? I think the barbarian could have stood to let off some steam after that fight. Also, unless not casting spells had been, discussed earlier, I don't think the guy who made the challenge just gets to rule that he wins by default. So this encounter was sus from the beginning. The DM's weird. After everyone started to leave, the DM stopped me and asked me to stay to play out the rest of the session in private. I declined and immediately left, but he would keep trying to pry via text later that night, asking what my character would do. I asked if I could slit his character's throat in his sleep, but of course he declined, but told me that I'd awake to his character gone, leaving behind a note asking to have fun again some other time. I pretty much cut contact with that group after that, though years later I noticed that he occasionally likes some of the art I post on social media, and it reminds me of this story from time to time. Dude, you haven't blocked him yet? There was one edit to this story, but it's been crossed out, so I'm going to read the second edit. Edit 2. This is my first post here, and some of you have pointed out that it may be wrong of me to show sympathy. In all honesty, I have just had this lingering guilt ever since I decided to share this story for some reason. I hope that while you read the comments below, you can keep in mind how I may feel going about something like this for the first time. Thank you all for your kind words. So let's read some of these comments. Zoran95, top comment. It's concerning how sexual assault is a common trope in these stories. Asshole DM. Responding to Zoran's post, we have Leotrim Funkelwork, who said, had a DM suggest we had an NSFW allowed adventure. Everyone agreed. The thing is, no one wanted to initiate something, because sure, if it happens, it happens, but why force it? Just one player and DM in our other campaigns couldn't stop hitting on my friend. He absolutely didn't read the room. It got so bad. He even started in his own campaigns to hit on her, until I left the group and server with him. My friend later told me it just got worse, and now we laugh about it. So, lonely, depressed people who have no social experiences or interactions, get them from D&D and get power hungry. This is, honestly a way too common trope in D&D where someone is trying to force sexy time roleplay with someone who is not interested and doesn't see why this is creepy and harmful because, hey, it's all just make-believe. But, there's a reason that certain stores have started having Ladies' Night D&D, which is where only women can attend, because unfortunately, there are, and again, it's not, there can be predatory women against women, men against men, but unfortunately it is common in these tropes that, somebody will use role-playing games as an excuse to try and hit on somebody that does not want to be hit on. And then they can always backpedal and go, oh, it's just a game, bro. It's not just a game, all right? You are role-playing, and there's always a little bit of you in every character, so try and not make that character creepy. Alright guys, our next story comes from John Frodo and is entitled Player Blames Game for His Own Bad Choices. This one is also labeled as not safe for work with an SA warning. Like I said before, unfortunately this is a common trope in these stories. This story also has the alternate title of Just Because You Can Doesn't Mean You Should. My group was settled into an apocalypse world game and having a great time. We had a gunlugger, a hoarder, and me, a battle babe. Usually we met at the GM's house, but this night we were gathered at mine. My place was much closer to where the hoarder left from for gaming, and this prompted him to bring a member of his youth group who'd expressed interest in our game and needed to be around people that night. This additional guest was a surprise, but we didn't mind. For context, we were all 27. The newcomer was just over 18. Wait, why did he have to be around people? That's... what? He proceeded to make a hocus, a person leading and empowered by a cult, and wouldn't you know it, he chose to be the priest of a sex cult. He strutted around town with a massive purple dildo attached to his codpiece, his only piece of clothing. He began acquiring followers left and right, that is, pressuring them into service. Already I was feeling greatly uncomfortable. My battle babe investigated the commotion and immediately ran into him. After about 10 seconds of chit-chat, he commented on how pretty I was and invited me to join his sex cult. I declined. He pulled a gun, ordered me to drop to my knees, and then gave me a choice. Kiss his giant purple dildo, thereby symbolically pledging allegiance to the cult, or take a headshot. He went aggro and rolled 10+, meaning that this choice was now mechanically enforced. If I didn't give the plastic phallus a kiss, I would take massive damage, maybe even die. I looked to our GM and asked what I could do about this situation. He shrugged apologetically, saying, "That's what the rules say." I ended up caving in, vowing to visit revenge upon him at some opportune moment in the future. I'm sorry, but I also notice another trope in these stories is the GM's utter failure to address the situation when a player is made uncomfortable by another player. I mean, this newbie is coming in and is just trying to take over the entire game with his weird sex priest character, and the GM isn't putting a stop to any of this malarkey. Like, I'm sorry, but I've experienced this before too, where you have someone coming, they're not even like showing up regularly. They're not a new, regular character. They're going to be here once, maybe twice, and they want to take this time to make the entire game that the rest of you have been playing all about them, and it never goes over well. I've actually seen a friendship end because our cleric brought somebody to the game, not telling the DM, again, unexpectedly, and this person who had rolled a character ahead of time when we all rolled our characters in front of each other and proceeded to try and make this entire session, which was pretty heavily into the story, into the meat of the campaign, all about them. It did not go over well, and our DM kind of had a falling out with the player who had brought this person to the game. I don't remember much else of the session because I was seething. What irritated me the most, though, was the Hocus player's refrain, "This game is so fucked up." He said it with a chuckle anytime the Hocus did something sexual, abusive, or just unkind, and pulled it off, as if it was the game's fault that he had forced my character and several NPCs into unwanted sex acts. Perhaps he believed that because the game made the situation possible, then it was to blame for permitting such depravity. Perhaps he was deflecting his own guilt. I don't know. Yeah, what kind of youth group was this? And why can't this guy be alone? I feel like youth group's not really doing much for him. Maybe he just needs someone to kick his teeth in. I don't know. No, don't recommend violence against weirdos. At least not on audio. The Hocus player did not return after that session. At our next session the following week, the Hoarder apologized profusely. He insisted that the Hocus's actions were unlike anything seen at their youth group. I have since learned that he was disinvited from the youth group not too long after for other reasons. The GM also apologized for letting the situation get out of hand. We were all caught off guard. The character of the Hocus was hanged by the townspeople, and we continued on with our game, blissfully, if willfully, ignorant. We all agreed that in the future, the group needed a decent amount of warning before a guest joined us, and that we needed to have higher vetting standards. In the years since, we've also incorporated lines and veils, as well as a policy akin to the X card, to keep us all feeling safer. Lesson learned, right? Let's take a look at the comments on this one. User MayMagic says, as soon as someone made a completely out of left field without pre-discussion character that was naked except for a Speedo codpiece with a purple dildo attached that exclusively goes around trying to murder and rape people, I'd suggest that player was probably not really interested in the collaborative story writing with other players so much as trolling, and throw that person out if they didn't get with the program. Sheesh. Actor 412 says, I gotta say, your GM doesn't come out smelling too good. Just allowing someone to hijack their game is one thing, but the way you tell it, they didn't even recognize the fucked upness when it was happening in real time. You obviously have some history with them, and there's more to the relationship than what you've written, and it's heartening to hear they grew a spine. I just wonder why they didn't have a spine in the first place. Trickster Wolf comments, that's what the rules say? This is not an appropriate response to non-consensual, non-negotiated erotic roleplay. I understand being in shock and reacting weirdly as a result, but the GM needs to be better than this. And, I think this really does speak to the idea that for a role-playing game to go off well, everybody, one, needs to have a similar vision, that they all want to tell a story within the world that the GM has created for them, and that they want to tell their stories together into one cohesive narrative. And that requires a level of respect for every other player that just was not shown in this story. Again, the OP does state that things have gotten better, but I'll tell you a little bit about my history as a DM. Now, I did not have a lot of role-playing experience when I started DMing. I'd played Dungeons & Dragons like once before. Technically, I'd played one campaign of 3.5 and one session of 5e that I never went back to. That's actually a story way earlier in the channel about how these people that I had never met before made the game excessively sexual. But the thing is, since I started running games, everybody has had a level of respect for each other that has made it, sometimes, the biggest hurdle we face is scheduling, as with all D&D, but beyond that, there is no in-game content that makes people uncomfortable. While I definitely try to make the consequences of people's actions realistic, there is a line. Nobody is ever going to get SA'd. No one is ever going to be forced into anything sexual against their will. There is not safe for work content in my games, but it is always at the behest of the player who is wanting to explore their own character, and it is always fade to black. One of the biggest examples of this is I created a character who she is a worshiper of the god of pain. But she has despite her appearance, which is she is in like fully spiked armor, she has a ton of piercings, she has a whip blade that is kind of, think Ivy from Soul Calibur, so she's absolutely terrifying presence, but she has the most bubbly personality you've ever met. She's like, oh my god, how you guys are like a little adventuring party. And in her mind, the way I make her character is she believes that life is pain, and that pain is good. So it is important that people keep living so that they can continue to experience pain. So the mission where they first met her, she actually was taking out a den of bandits. And, they were also trying to take out this band, but when they got there, most of the bandits were already slaughtered. Save for their leader, who the party came in on her, basically chopping off and cauterizing with healing magic all of the bandit leader's limbs, so that he was just going to be a living torso, because in her mind, one, the bandits, the most of them deserved to die because of all the lives they had taken, and therefore robbing people of the gift of living to experience more pain. And then she also, as punishment, and also a way of redeeming him, wanted the bandit to live the remainder of his life in excruciating pain. Now, I tell you all this to tell you that our female gnome bard found this very attractive, and decided to flirt with this scary lady. And after a fade to black, I rolled, and her basically uttering the phrase, "Step on me, mommy," I did determine that she did take 4 piercing damage in the course of what transpired, but that was it. And we all laugh about it to this day. Heck, we were telling the story at my joint bachelorette party that we were all out to eat. Our gnome bard is one of my fiance's bridesmaids, and the story came up as we were sharing D&D stories with other people there, and it got a lot of laughs. But to do things like that, you have to respect one another. And I don't feel like this game had this at the time. And it's also why you typically gotta vet people before you just go, hey, I'm bringing a friend to the game, is that cool? Alright guys, let's do one more today. This one is from Arnie Is My DM Name, and is entitled Pervy Player Won't Take a Hit. And won't take a hint, sorry. And just like before, this one is not safe for work with the SA warning. Guess we've got a bit of a theme going on today. My coworker wanted to try out D&D. I helped him set up a character, and the first session, mostly combat, went okay. He kept saying he was new every 10 to 15 minutes, but overall it wasn't that bad. Second session, he comes in and interrupts the DM while he is doing a recap. He kept asking questions that the DM was trying to say. Then he started arguing about what to do because he wanted to XP farm, or a milestone campaign. Eventually, we convinced him to go to the docks, where he was threatened to kill the first mate NPC for no reason, and only backed off after being told he would be destroyed. Then he started hitting on the captain. At this point, I pulled him aside and let him know that D&D was not the place to play out his sexual fantasies. He said okay, which lasted until he started hitting on the helmsman. He went and searched her room so he could find something to talk to her about, found the picture of her and her husband, and proceeded to hit on her. DM threatened him, ignored him, flat out refused to participate. It came to a head when the player decided a distraction was needed and he would take one for the team, in his words. He went and forcefully kissed the helmsman, who turns out to be a badass. He was warned. That kills him. Unconscious on the deck doing his death saving throws, he was still trying to hit on her. DM decided to give him one more chance and allowed him to be stabilized. Player was secured below decks and continued to try and do stuff even though he was unconscious. Eventually he gets up, 1 day later, and immediately goes back to the helmsman, who had been injured in combat, and heals her, then says she owes him. DM called it a night, and I will not be calling my coworker for the next session. Now let's take a look at the comments. Squattin' Stuff says, this is genuinely insane. I feel like taking the hint really undersells how oblivious he was to what was happening and his determination to be a creep. Insomnia Paladin says, "Ouch! Feel sorry for you, OP. Can't imagine this guy is a pleasure to work with in real life, unless he just goes mask off when playing TTRPGs." The OP responds to this, "That's the thing. He got a sexual harassment complaint a year ago, but the cameras showed it to be a mistake. I've hung out at bars with him before, and even worked out of town staying in the same hotel room. Nothing really stood out, but looking back on it now I see a whole bunch of stuff." And Void Tree MC responds to that one with, "Sexual harassment flourishes in ambiguous circumstances where a bystander may not be convinced that's what happened. But sexual harassers don't get away with it once and then stop. They keep doing it until someone stops them, at which point damage may be done." So yeah, this one is not in any way, shape, or form the worst story I've ever read. The guy's definitely a creep, but I'm just kind of in awe of just how far they took this. Like, ultimately, they said they wanted to try this. They immediately start being pervy, meaning that they probably had been at least told or were under the impression that this is the kind of thing that people do in D&D, but I don't know. And the fact that, like, clearly totally missing the point that his character is dying and bleeding out and is still trying to hit on these characters. And most of the time, when a guy is being unnecessarily creepy, they're usually targeting one other person, be it the DM or another player. This guy is just perving on NPCs for no reason. I had a player in one of my campaigns. Good guy, but yeah, definitely was kind of sexually frustrated, hadn't been getting any in his real life for quite a while, but he at one point got so determined that this one NPC, that he could convince them to give him a hand job. I finally had to say, dude, it doesn't matter how well you roll, this lady is not interested in giving your halfling rogue a hand job. I'm sorry, it's just not gonna happen. And he was super disappointed by this, and I was like, dude, it's just me doing a funny voice. There wasn't like a real hand job on the line here. It's all make-believe. But I don't know, some people are just going through some stuff, I guess. And that's the video, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. I do hope you enjoyed these stories. Up on the screen, you'll see there's two videos I've linked. One is my most recent Lost Media video at the time of recording this. Those have been very popular on the channel. Please go check it out. And assuming that the deadline has not passed when you're watching this, please enter our 400 subscriber giveaway. Also, another video I'll put up here for you to potentially check out is an episode of my series, The Good, the Bad, and the Ecchi, which is a manga review series I'm really trying to get off the ground. It's not really been catching that hard, but I am still hopeful. So go ahead, check that out. Check out the Lost Media video. Be sure to like, be sure to comment, be sure to subscribe, and be sure to check the links and potentially buy one of my miniatures. They are, of course, available on Etsy, eBay, and Mercari. I make all kinds of custom miniatures. Feel free to check those out. So until next time, everybody, I'm Mr. Sean. This is Chimera Miniatures, and I sincerely hope that you alpha great day and an even beta tomorrow. Bye-bye.